In May of 2008, the U.S. Congress Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations of the Committee on Energy and Commerce met to discuss the proliferation of bio-containment labs. At the time, the Department of Homeland Security was proposing the shutdown of a facility isolated on an island off the east coast of the United States and transfer of its operations to the mainland. This specific bioresearch facility had been at the center of an effort to combat the pathogen known as foot and mouth disease. Foot and mouth disease, a highly contagious disease caused by a virus that can severely affect cattle and farm animals. Its virulence made it a major concern during the Cold War, when the US military had considered using it to destroy Soviet farms and food stores. During the meeting in 2008, the subcommittee discussed a government exercise that had been implemented to assess the preparedness of the US in the case of a large-scale outbreak. The exercise ended with the destruction of almost 50 million head of livestock, food shortages, riots, and a 25-mile ditch filled with the carcasses of infected animals. The facility that for 50 years has been at the heart of the research for this calamitous disease may have other secrets locked away in its deepest levels. This case file joined the theorists as they go for the body and reacquaint themselves with the great governor of Minnesota on the shores of Plum Island.
Welcome to Alien Theorists Theorizing Case File 213, Plum Island. I'm Braden.
I'm Zell.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Andrew.
Woo!
Another week, another file.
Another week, another file. You know what? I will say this right off the bat. I absolutely love this case file because it connected me with an old friend.
Long lost friend.
Long lost friend. And I don't know why we drifted apart, but goddamn, Jesse Ventura is the goddamn
He's a goddamn
gift.
king.
He's the gift that keeps on giving.
In no simpler words.
I mean, has there been a man that's worn any more hats than Jesse Ventura?
I don't know. I don't. Maybe you guys haven't seen the movie Abraxas, but that is not the gift that keeps on giving.
I haven't, but if Jesse Ventura's in
I've
it's got to be
seen
good.
The Running Man. I've seen Predator.
Oh, yes, he's good.
I've seen
good in those
Ricochet.
ones. But older Jesse Ventura Abraxas is no such gift. There's nothing good in that.
Come on, Dan. That man used to be a Navy SEAL.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
I was a Navy SEAL for 17
I mean, he doesn't have
years.
time to bleed. Yeah, you know.
I ain't got time to bleed.
He's also a sexual tyrannosaurus.
I was the governor of Minnesota.
I once wrestled Bob Backlund for 45 minutes in a draw.
What do you say to the fact that there is not a single plum on all of Plum Island? And that's a fact, Richard.
What pitted fruit is as sinister as the plum? I ask you that. You don't have an answer.
The plum is only native to Southeast Asia. And I guarantee you that at any convenience store on Plum Island, you can't find one. So why would they name it that if they're not hiding something?
But yeah, that covers a lot of the. Goodbye, everybody.
It's over.
Finished. That's it.
That's it.
Case file over.
What do you need?
Yeah, I don't think you need anything else. That pretty much nailed it on the head. We've covered everything.
Braden got his old friend on the show just for a quick 2-minute little segment. Told you everything there is to need to know about Plum Island.
Yeah.
And
there are no plums on Plum Island.
My Jesse Ventura is just an exasperated Kevin from The Office.
yep.
It's funny how natural that comes to you, hey?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you ever seen this guy handle chili before?
Yeah.
It's a mess.
Nice.
Plum Island. Everyone's favorite conspiracy theory of the internet.
I mean, it is one of the favorite. I don't know about
It's awesome.
most favorite.
One of the
It is
favorites,
fucking
definitely.
awesome.
It's super intriguing. I mean, it's got those weird coincidences where you're like, God damn, that's a pretty nice coincidence.
It's got fucking creatures. It's got Nazis. It's got fucking diseases. It's got everything. It's got everything.
What more can you ask for?
Jesse Ventura.
So those who aren't so familiar with Jesse Ventura and Plum Island is an island that's about 1.5 miles off the coast of Long Island, New York. It is a island that was purchased in 1899 after being owned previous to that by families, number of affluent families that lived in New York at the time. And
don't you think it's weird that we don't know the name of the previous owner?
I mean,
it's a mystery.
I just didn't bother to look it up.
I couldn't
and
find
you
it.
called yourself a conspiracy theorist, Dan.
What kind of patriot are you? If you don't know,
you tell me that, Dan.
Dude, I tried to find out who owned the island previously, and like outside of like anything legit, people are just like, there's like Rockefellers are thrown around, and like, they just repossessed it from like a person who died, and they just took it over. That's a mystery I couldn't find, and everywhere I looked, no one states who the previous owner was.
The previous owner was the Native Americans of the area that was taken from them.
I mean, eventually, as is most of the land,
most of all that land there.
It was purchased in 1899 by the United States government following the Spanish-American War for approximately probably today, I think equal today's total of $90,000. And then the U.S. Army went ahead and established a artillery post on there, later known as Fort Terry, and it's still, I think it's still its official designation for part of the island.
Well, that was
Fort Terry,
and that was like, the idea was that it's easier to defend. Like radar wasn't that great in the day, so if there was a fleet amassing, at least Plum Island would have visuals on it before some sort of defensive strategy for the East Coast.
Right, it was a coastal artillery port, which was the defensive strategy of the day. You wanted to have stuff on kind of like islands. I mean, in Europe they have those island forts and things like that, and other places.
They probably had them. Like quite a few installations up and down the coast, I'd imagine.
Oh, so you admit there's islands in other parts of the world?
Yes, Jesse. There are islands. Perfect. You are correct.
Yes, Mr. Body. We can confirm that.
But what we're mostly going to talk about is not just the geographic location of the island, but we're actually talking about there's a site that is located on there known as the Plum Island Animal Disease Center. It's a federal facility that is pretty much to this day, right up until probably, I think, early next year or late this year, in a month or so. It is the nation's most important lab for combating infectious animal diseases.
Like, what's it foot and mouth disease or?
Yep. Foot and mouth disease. That's the one that it's most recognized for in biological circles, is that it is known for helping to combat foot and mouth or hoof and mouth. Like it has a number of names: hand, foot, face,
hand, foot,
disease.
Mouth. And people, anyways, and kids.
People get it. Like, people get this disease. There were some readings where I was like, to make sure it doesn't jump. And I was like, motherfuckers, I was like, when I was in Thailand, I remember getting a handout and they were like, some of the kids may have hand, foot, mouth disease. And I was like, what the hell is that? And I had to look it up, and I was like, you get some blisters on my hands and shit. Like, this is crazy. I was like, so then when I was reading, I was like, it is in humans. Like, there was a lot of misconception of what I was reading and listening of people thinking that this right now only affects hooved animals, and I'm like, it's called
the difference though is like you can get it as a adolescent and you can get sick, spike fevers, you can be ill. Your cattle gets it and it can wipe out an entire population.
Yeah,
of cattle.
That's what they're worried about that because if you have a herd of 10,000 head of cattle and it gets in there, you got to obliterate the whole thing. So it's like the economic loss of like that getting out into like a nation's food supply is devastating.
So yeah, absolutely. I think people, probably our listeners in the UK, are probably familiar with the 2001 outbreak
there, and they had over 2,000 cases of the disease in farms across most of the British countryside. And then after they were done, you have to cull the entire herd because it spreads. It's so virulent that it spreads so quickly. It can be carried by feed. It can be carried on, caretaker clothing, on the breath of animals, anywhere. So it pretty much and it ruins it can ruin dairy cows, their milk production goes way down. Same with it just makes animals super sick, sores, all kinds of gross stuff. And then after the crisis was over, they had to destroy all of these animals. They said the estimated cost was about 8 billion pounds.
Oh my!
It's fucking what, double Canadian?
Basically,
yeah, double. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. So they're looking after. It's this is a level 3 biolab facility. So we talked about the one in Wuhan before, the level 4. Pretty much there's level 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 is basic. 2, it could be moderate risk of infection. 3 is potential for airborne transmission. So that's when you start to see the guys in they suit up and they have the special chambers. And level 4 is infectious agents that could aerosolize and be transmitted. So that's
right. So level 4 is you're basically wearing spacesuits. You have to wear pretty much spacesuits, or all the lab work, all of the manipulating, or whatever you're working with has to be inside one of those seamless
where you put
hoods,
the gloves on?
Ventilated hoods. Yeah, with the little glove. Yeah, with those gloves.
Yeah.
It has to be inside of there.
But that's not even proof. Again, Mission Impossible 3, she just fucking chimered it right through the little latex glove.
Well, yeah. Level 4 is, all that is true. But also usually it's a room inside a room and you have to scrub up to go in.
Yeah, there's airlocks are involved,
Mm-hmm.
and there's 3 levels of decontamination. You have to walk out, decontaminate your suit, take your clothes off, decontaminate your inner suit, take another shower, go out of that, strip down naked, decontaminate that, and then you have to sit for a couple hours or something like that after working with some of these things. It's a pretty involved process.
Yes.
Pretty lengthy process.
So we're almost at the highest level on Plum Island, from what the public knows at least.
So Plum Island has kind of changed hands over the years. Originally, we said, the island was mostly owned by the U.S. Army. Then it was turned over by the U.S. Chemical Corps after World War II. Then it kind of went to the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, took control of it. And then after the 9/11 attacks, Homeland Security took over it in 2003. They took over official control, and then with them, they worked through some private contractors and such, maintaining the facility and then maintaining security around the facility.
It makes sense.
So,
Eastern Seaboard, level 3 lab.
Well, I did read that, because when I heard Homeland Security, I was like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of interesting. But then I had also, that specific lab was named was it Al Qaeda, a attack list?
Yeah, right. In 2008, they found a list of targets from an Al Qaeda. They recovered a list of targets that were put on an Al Qaeda list, and Plum Island facility was on there as a target that could perhaps cause as much, when you're looking for to cause as much damage or as much kind of chaos as possible. Plum Island was on there.
Well, it makes sense, right? If there's airborne viruses there and you break them out of their seal, who knows what could happen? So it definitely made sense to me that I was I would kind of change hands, but it was kind of, I was like, well, it was weird for me that I was like, well, why are they taking over the whole, Homeland Security is now going to be running this research lab? I was like, you think they would just be maybe in charge of
the security? I thought they were just in charge of the security of it.
They worked in the Homeland Security took control of the security, and then you had USDA kind of working in a partnership between the two. But I think it was kind of under the whole thing was under the Homeland Security as it kind of counted, because at this point you had the kind of you had the cropping up of the kind of agro defense. I think kind of became a thing where it was, people were worried about Homeland Security kind of started to worry about the possibility that there could be a terrorist attack that would affect like food stores and livestock and things like this. Like these would be considered vulnerable terror targets.
Definitely.
Little did they know they didn't have to worry about terrorists, but more so ex-governors of Minnesota.
This is an interesting time too, because like between 2001 and 2008, the amount of like germ labs and like research labs of that, like of this kind that are doing this kind of research exploded from like a couple hundred to over 1,300 within the decade.
Just in the States or worldwide?
Just in the States, which I thought was fascinating. I was like, that's a fucking lot of labs doing this kind of work. Not all level 3, but like very similar. So it was like definitely people were starting to get interested in, you know, this kind of research. And then it would make sense that if Homeland Security would take it over, because you got to think there's some memo about like potential, you know, germ attacks or you know what I mean? Like we lived through the anthrax mail, you know, shit like that. So it would make sense that you would take control of this facility, maybe in the guise of, well, we're going to do this research to better prepare ourselves for someone else's offense.
Right. Yeah.
You know, the classic, the best defense is a better offense.
The best defense is 1,300 biolabs across your country studying potential hazardous effects.
I mean, yeah. So you had the aging facility on there, which is now like, it's been there since the 50s.
Yeah.
Like it's been working on stuff like there. So throughout its entire 60-year history or so of the facility, it does try on its website stuff. It touts that they haven't had a number of, you know, they try to say that they're 100% safe or whatever that, but that's not necessarily the case. As that I think they word it as that no virus or no pathogen has escaped the island specifically, but they did have at least one verifiable, like through, you know, which is available through public documents that you find, that there was an outbreak in 1978. So in 1978, there was a release of the virus that causes foot and mouth disease. And it managed to get into some of the cattle in the holding pens in Plum Island. So actually like outside, and the island or the facility took it rather seriously, because this triggered like a whole new bunch of safety development of safety procedures on the island. And even though that one had been known, like when it got out, like I think one newspaper referred to it as the what was it? What was it? Like the devil's prison of viruses or something, is some really sensational headline about talking about the facility itself.
So that's who used to own it. The devil.
The devil himself.
Makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. The Homeland Security actually told the House committee
the island has ties to Satan himself.
The Homeland Security Department told the House committee, the United States, you know, House of Representatives, when they were kind of grilling them over the possibility of something cracking out of Plum Island, kind of got back on the idea. Because I think in 2008 or 2006, they were actually talking about, this is when they started to begin the idea, or they began to start to assess sites for the relocation of the operations that were going on Plum Island to another facility.
Yeah, they're switching it to where, the Kansas or something, aren't they?
Well, that's
correct. They plan to build a bigger, more sinister facility in Kansas.
They're currently building a more deadlier facility in the heart of cattle country.
Well, it's already built. That's the thing.
It's being
So what you're telling us, Dan, is we're too late.
Right. But there were other possible locations for it. So like this facility is named the National Bio and Agro Defense Facility. And the other possible locations were Athens, Georgia, Butner, North Carolina, San Antonio, and Florida, Mississippi. Those are the ones that were kind of vying for it. But Kansas has the advantage, or at least this is what the officials claim as to why they chose Kansas is since Kansas, that specific location and its proximity to like Kansas State University, which does a lot of agricultural, biological research. It's part of, or it's like right in what is known as like the animal health corridor. And it's like, it's
Sounds
where
like a
all
terrible
of the
place
research, all of
do
the
this research.
it's where all the research, all of the, not only from like the academic side, but from the industry side as well, kind of intersect in Kansas. So their reasoning for putting it there, as most people would be like, why the fuck would you put a facility to study virulent diseases right in the heart of cattle country?
Yeah.
Their reasoning is that we're going to put this facility here that's going to have biosafety level 4.
Oh, even upgrading it too.
Facilities, upgraded facilities, freshly minted, freshly built, as opposed to the aging infrastructure that is on Plum Island. We're going to put it here because we can have access to both the industry and the academics, like both the private side and the academic side coming together.
You think the industry guys would be like, no,
Easy.
beat it.
Yeah.
This is a terrible place to do this. We don't want anything to do with it.
What? Just it's. I mean, if they had one slip up, catastrophic,
Yep.
right?
I mean, but you could also say the same thing as like, why does the CDC have their place in Atlanta?
Highly dense.
yeah, the
populated
thrashers
city.
aren't even there anymore. So
Killed them off, obviously.
You gotta put facilities where the infrastructure is with people, I guess so. But still, one slip up, you got 5 million cattle just waiting to be scorched.
Well, I mean, isn't that the capital of isn't that the biggest population where they cattle farm? Or
I don't think necessarily Kansas. I don't know the figures off the top of my head, but
Cattle inventory versus human population.
so there was a lot.
Six.
There was a lot of stuff, and people are going to be like, "Well, why did nobody tell me about this?" They did. They talked about this for a long time. Like, there's a lot of deliberation over putting this place in Kansas. Like, but
they never consulted me, Dan. I never heard
That's
it
true.
once.
They didn't.
They didn't.
But are you are you an expert in biosafety and biosecurity?
even the governor
I
at
don't
the
know.
time in New York was lobbying for it to stay on Plum Island and just to upgrade the facilities there for the reason that we're talking about. Of like, gee, if there is an incident, there's less damage to be done on Plum Island than where it currently now is in Kansas.
Well, I mean, I wonder if it kind of also helps the budget, kind of helps the city a little bit.
The area.
But that was one of the selling points that I think one of the state senator from Kansas kind of pushed, was being like, when he was trying to sell it to the people, he's like, it's going to bring jobs.
Yeah,
Like, that's what it's going to do.
You'd think an island would be the best spot for this, because I don't think birds can carry hand, foot, and mouth disease.
No, I don't.
Right?
Yeah,
So
I don't think they
it's
can
really
carry
hard for them
hand-foot
to for that disease to get off the fucking island. Like, it makes a lot of sense.
Maybe they're working. It might have had other ones that not public, maybe, but yeah, it's way less likely that a bird's gonna traverse that into cattle country or something.
So it's just putting it there in Kansas. There was a lot of deliberation as to whether they were putting it. There's a lot of assessments done by the Homeland Security. Had to submit, I think, at least 2 assessments of the site, and then along with the National Academy of Sciences as well, had to commission an independent study to try and put it there. And from what I was reading, the Homeland Security assessment and the National Academy of Sciences assessment, they were at odds. Like the Homeland Security said, no, it's fine. Like, the worst thing that could happen, it probably wouldn't happen in a million years, but it's like a tornado. Like, that's the only risk that we can think, like tornado or earthquake. And then the National Academy of Sciences were being like, no, like most of the stuff, like, you're overestimating like the impact that a tornado or an earthquake had, where most of your risk is going to come from human error. And that happens.
Yep.
And you guys haven't, we don't think that you guys have put in the correct numbers in your assessments or things like that. So, and then the committee, the House committee that was considering, because they wouldn't release the funds to construct the facility until they had these assessments done, until they had these things done. But that was it. They just wanted them done. They didn't say that they were going to be considered. They're just like, okay, well, yeah, thanks a lot, science nerds. And then they're like,
Fucking
we
nerds.
just go and built it anyways.
Well, and this would be all well and good if the only thing we were concerned about on Plum Island was research into hand, foot, and mouth disease. But I mean, this island, is shrouded in mystery, and there is tons of other things rumored to be studied there, and nefarious people who have potentially worked there.
Ooh, are you getting into a little post World War II?
Why don't we? We all know every good conspiracy, we have to bring it back to Nazi Germany.
Oh,
and this one has some great ties to Operation Paperclip.
Every scientific program in the States had a Nazi pulled over from Paperclip, and he's got his fingers in there somewhere. And on this one,
Plum Island's no different.
No different.
So you guys are referring to Dr. Eric Traub, I assume, right? So,
who?
Who's talking about?
So, but I mean, first we got to talk about, we actually mentioned him when we were doing the research into this. I recognized the name, and it kind of hit for me. I was like, oh wait, no. We talked about this guy. We talked about this guy when we did Operation Paperclip, because he was one of the people that Dr. Kurt Blom, who is the director of the Nazi biological warfare program during World War II, actually mentioned to his interrogators when he was brought over, that he was kind of his deputy. Eric Traub was Blom told them that, first he told the Americans that the Soviets had the best developed biological warfare program next to the Nazis. And then he said that Eric Traub is one of the guys that you want to get. And Traub had actually been captured along with the facilities on Rice, an island in the Baltic Sea known as Ricin, and their facility, not Ricin, the chemical, but RIES.
That guy, he's pretty smart. He's like, listen, I know you guys, shit's heating up with the fucking Russians. The Russians are next best to us, so you might want to fucking start, right? We can help you out in this.
Yeah,
and then he starts handpicking his friends. He's like, okay, well, we need this guy because he's the best.
Right. Yeah. So Traub was a lab chief of Incel Riemsa, which is the Nazi biological warfare laboratory in the Baltic Sea. And he worked kind of directly for Adolf Hitler's second in charge, old Heinrich Himmler.
Probably should have stood trial at the
Nuremberg. That guy should have been in Nuremberg.
So,
but he didn't.
Traub himself had actually been he had spent time in the United States. Some of his scientific career was spent on a fellowship at the Rockefeller Institute, Princeton, New Jersey.
Ooh, and Rockefeller, you say?
Did you say Rockefeller?
And after the Russians had managed to capture him, they had taken everything in his laboratory, including what was known as his Turkish strain of cattle plague. So at the end of the war, Traub actually got evacuated from that facility by the British, and then came back to the United States on her project Paperclip. And then pretty much months into his contract, we talked about Operation Paperclip and how everything kind of went really fast. The United States was trying to beat the Soviets.
Snatch as many Nazis as you can as fast
get
as
many
can.
scientists.
That's what it was.
Whatever
it was
they're
hungry hippos, but instead of
with Nazis,
but Nazis
instead of marbles.
And Traub was actually asked because of his expertise. I mean, he was a world-renowned scientist. He was one of the best in the business to study hand and mouth disease. He felt like that was his main area of expertise, and then also other diseases like Rinderpest. And I think one of the what was the other one? Can't remember off the top of my head. But
kind of insects did he study? Do you know? Did he any?
So
interesting.
Entomological vectors of spreading diseases. I'm not 100% sure about any of that kind of came across.
Well, it's one of the things you'll read about this guy is that one of his ideas that he had was to try to find ways to weaponize insects that could infect big populations, such as mosquitoes and ticks.
Mm-hmm. Right. And we talked about that too in what was it, Unit 731, where the Japanese were also experimenting with those, how to deliver biological warfare agents through disease vectors such as insects.
I mean, the States were doing that type of shit too, right? They were looking. I mean, after obviously, but they were looking at using mosquitoes.
I'm pretty sure a lot of places were looking at those things because it's like everybody knew about yellow fever.
Listen,
like everybody knew about yellow fever at this point.
And everyone
how would you
knows
be able to use that?
How fucking annoying mosquitoes are. And like, dude, we were training fucking dolphins and sea otters and shit. Like, you don't think we tried to figure out how to weaponize insects? Like, goddamn.
Well, not only that, but think of the costs.
They had plans for cats. All right.
Yeah, but think about the costs, right? Like, would there be anything cheaper than fucking utilizing insects?
No.
No.
Dude, you can mass produce those little guys.
Easily, right?
Right.
And versus their mortality rates in these like yellow fever and shit like that, like it's crazy.
You put them through little tick boot camp, right? Get them jumping.
Yeah. To work with insects too, you probably don't
have
have
a
to
little flea circus.
You don't have
to go.
You don't have to do any probably much less like animal rights or anything. Like probably much easier. No one cares about bugs.
They weren't worried about that shit though. They were testing humans. This is the same. They're doing MK Ultra and shit. They're like, listen, we got mosquitoes. It's not a problem.
Yeah, but the mosquitoes never come back to haunt them.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, it's smarter than snakes.
Snakes.
That didn't work out very well.
Oh, you talk about Operation Northwoods?
Yes, exactly.
Snakes on a plane?
Yeah, it didn't work out too well.
So Traub was consulted on a number of kind of construction and also like containment procedures for certain things, including guidelines and things for how to operate at Fort Detrick, the Army's biological warfare headquarters, which is still there in Frederick, Maryland. And, he was actually asked to consult on animal disease program from a biological warfare perspective. So this also led him to they used his expertise to provide the groundwork for what was then Fort Detrick's offshore germ warfare animal disease lab on Plum Island. And so Traub is documented of visiting Plum Island Animal Disease Center in New York for at least 3 different occasions during the 1950s. And at that time, the Plum Island facility had been operated by the Department of Agriculture. So it was still the FDA, and conducted research on foot and mouth disease, or at least that's what they were telling everybody. And that was, of course, like that's Traub's main.
Yeah, but that's exactly where you call bullshit right away, because why would you be bringing in like this Operation Paperclip? It was specifically started because of the Cold War, right? Like they were using it to develop V2 rocket, all this type of shit. So then why do you just randomly take this fucking Nazi who specializes in disease warfare with these insects and drop them? Oh, we're just going to, let's utilize them at this agricultural facility. Maybe you can help out there. Like, shut the fuck up.
He's not working here officially.
Well, they're just worried that they grabbed one of his buddies in Russia.
But they did offer him a leadership position at Plum Island in 1958.
Yeah, I wonder why, Dan.
But he declined.
It's a goddamn conspiracy.
Yeah, according to the government, he declined.
Absolutely.
So
that's some horse shit.
Speak to the reasoning, but I'm not going to do it because you guys
there is no. So why would you? But that's ridiculous. Why would you go to the? You've got hundreds. You've got hundreds of people within your own country that aren't fucking war criminals that you could utilize in that situation. But no, you randomly kidnap a dude from fucking Germany, a place you were just at war with, to come over and work in your agricultural facility?
Because those people were world-renowned scientists. Like prior to the war, he was known for his work.
So that would justify taking a fucking Nazi war criminal and bringing him just to work for your FDA facility. Why wouldn't you just kidnap all heads of industry from fucking Germany then? Hey, you know what? Let's kidnap the best fucking... No, not for fucking Operation Paperclip.
We got Werner von Braun. We got Dr. Kurt Blom. We got a number of chemical engineers, pretty much anybody that they could take.
And what did they work on?
They worked on rockets, V2 rockets. That's how we got to the moon.
Okay, so why are you bringing over a guy that's specializing in fucking diseases to work at an FDA facility?
Because foot and mouth disease, his main area of expertise, was still a very real threat, and there were still outbreaks that were endemic to other parts of the world.
All right,
so why would you not bring the person who is an expert?
CIA, Dan.
Oh, were you there? Were you there?
Yes, I was.
Dan's got intellect from well back.
Well,
download it on the hard drive.
Like, the reason why I tend to believe too that, maybe there was off bookworks, off the books kind of moonlighting there, is because of the fact that, we hear about him working on weaponizing insects. And then shortly after, little something pops up for the first time. Lyme disease.
Oh,
Where did Lyme disease come from?
nasty little virus or disease.
Before we get to Lyme disease, though, I'm empty here, boys. Try to reload.
All right, before we get to Lyme disease, we're gonna do a quick refill.
Reload.
We'll be right back.
We will be right back. Welcome back, theorists. It's me, ex-governor of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura. Where were we? Plum Island. We were just getting into
the thick of it. Things
Lyme
getting interesting
disease.
now.
Lyme disease. Nazis to Lyme disease.
One, I had no idea that Lyme disease was as recently discovered as it is. That was surprising. I knew it was like hard to diagnose, and I've heard people be like, I have Lyme disease and no one believes me. And frankly, I don't believe them either. But it's...
If you have Lyme disease, don't tell Braden. He doesn't care.
I just remember, dude, there was a big PSA on Canada one time about like the dangers of tick bites, and it was just
On Canada?
On Canada. Just in general.
Canada. And I can't remember. It was like a news series or something, or a news segment, and it had all these people that suffered these terrible like ailments that forever couldn't get diagnosed because the diagnosing in Canada, I guess at the time of this, I'm sure it's gotten better now, but at the time it was so hard to diagnose Lyme disease.
It hasn't, though. That's the thing. Like, it hasn't gotten a lot better. It's still a very mysterious illness. You have this like myriad of different symptoms. It affects everybody differently. It's super bizarre, man. Like, that's a lot of people have to seek out naturopaths because there aren't doctors willing to diagnose them with it, especially because, like, I'll get into it in a bit, but a lot of people will have that classic bullseye-like rash, but that's only in like 60 to 70 cases.
Man, it's
right? Like,
out of 100 or
pardon me?
percent.
The 60,
Yes,
70%. Okay.
Dude,
Yeah.
it's crazy because it's kind of, in a way, kind of similar to COVID, isn't it? Affects people in so many different ways. Like how it travels through the body.
I wonder what other similarities it has with COVID.
Are you about to tell us, medical expert?
I don't know. I can tell you a little bit about Lyme disease before Dan gets into the history of how it was, how they stumbled upon it, though, if you guys are interested in that.
Yeah, what happens when you get Lyme disease?
So I'll start with let's bring it back, because I had to learn a little bit. Like, I ended up having a patient one time. Like, we go to pick this person up and they're like, oh, like the CAD comes up and you get a little description of what's going on. It's like, just like some type of exacerbated symptoms of Lyme disease. And I'm like, you know what? I've never ran into this. I don't know what the fuck it is. Do a little research, whatever. I read about it. Okay, you know what? Chronic fatigue, migraines, fevers, stiff joints, that, and then we get to this person's house and this lady greets us at the door with one fucking leg that would, like, she couldn't move it. It was dragging, kind of like fucking Igor or whatever his name is, and like her head was stuck to the side. She had debilitating pain from head to toe. And like this lady had 1 foot in the fucking grave. And I'm like, okay, like, I need to familiarize myself with this a little bit more. So I did a little bit of research on it, and I actually chose it when I was going through my PCP school. I wrote a paper on Lyme disease.
Oh, so you're an expert.
Yeah.
And so
I
now
wouldn't say that.
Andrew
I'm not
is
an
going
expert
to
in
read his report word for word.
Word for word, front to back.
Sit back for the 18-page.
A lot of spelling mistakes.
Not edited.
A lot of spelling mistakes.
My critical analysis of Lyme disease.
So a lot of people don't know. You actually, like, because, like, dogs get ticks, different animals get ticks. The type of ticks that affect dogs, those aren't the type of ticks that are going to give you Lyme disease. It's specifically deer ticks are the ones that you need to be worried
little
about.
Fuckers.
Okay, so now it's super interesting because these deer ticks, they hang on to blades of grass. And basically they're sitting on these blades of grass, constantly snapping their little pinchers, their claws, waiting to grasp onto a mammal. And it's interesting because they sense the CO2 of the mammal walking by, and that's what it knows to fucking pinch on you. So not all ticks are infected with Lyme disease, right? So it is like an infection that they will have. But the interesting thing about Lyme disease is it actually makes like the ticks that are infected with Lyme disease are far more efficient at finding fucking hosts.
Oh, weird.
Isn't that fucking weird?
That is a weird stat.
So anyway, so the type of ticks that we normally are worried about that, we get Lyme disease are they're nymph stage ticks. They're adolescent ticks. Adult ticks don't normally feed on humans. So now basically what happens is once those little claws pinch into you, it takes about 24 to 36 hours of them feeding on you for the bacteria, the Bierberg Doferier. Is that right, Dan? You could probably
Bergdorferi.
Yeah. Bierberg Doferi.
Well, it's Borrelia Bergdorferi.
Well, the B is short
big
for Borrelia.
The big B.
Right.
Dirty B.
Basically what happens is it takes about 24 to 36 hours from the bacteria to transfer from its mid-stomach to its saliva. And then from the saliva, it goes into the bloodstream. Then it proceeds basically to wreak absolute havoc on the human body, giving you bacterial infection. So this bacteria is actually quite exceptional because it's figured out a way to transport itself through the bloodstream, but it also removes itself from the bloodstream by latching onto walls of blood vessels. So it basically attaches to these cells and vessels without letting go and getting washed away through the extracellular matrix, which is like, it's interesting because that's basically what the tick does to the human, right? It attaches to you and, it's next to impossible to get them off you. You have to get it like fucking burned off you, right? So the other interesting thing that they just discovered that it can also change its protein expression at a much faster rate than the normal mutation rate for bacteria. So we're talking like 15 to 20 times faster, which makes it next to impossible for your immune system to catch up, right? So by the time that your immune system, your body creates antibodies to fight this infection, it's already mutated I don't know how many times. So those antibodies that it created don't recognize that infection and don't fight it.
So that's why you get those long haul Lyme disease sufferers.
Exactly.
They can't catch up.
No, it's like you said, Zell. It's got some eerily similar fucking
almost
features to COVID.
Almost like seemingly engineered, like it seems just by the way they act.
Right. Well, it's interesting too because the way they test for it is they do antibody tests, and how long does it take for your body to make those fucking antibodies?
Right, and then they change.
Exactly. Like so anyways, the symptoms, you'll be dealing with fever, chills, headache, fatigue, muscle and joint aches, swollen lymph nodes. And then the big, one of the big cells that I was talking about is the erythema migrans. I think that's might be the proper pronunciation for it, but that's basically an expanding skin rash that gives the appearance of that bullseye. And that's like, it's almost a blessing to present with that symptom because then you can get put on, like once you realize that you have that, you can get put on the course antibiotics to fight this. Because if you get on antibiotics soon enough, you should be able to beat it. Like we're talking, especially in areas that are super common to have, Lyme disease and ticks, they will prophylactically give you fucking antibiotics if you think you've come encounter
just to get ahead of it as fast as they can.
Absolutely, because it has to be caught fast,
or it mutates and off it goes.
And
then it's really hard, unbelievably hard to deal with.
Debilitating. There are, but like, believe me, like I've ran into people who have Lyme disease, and it is being treated and it is manageable, right? Untreated, it is absolutely debilitating and will end up fucking shutting your organs down and fucking killing you.
Yeah, but the rate of death of Lyme disease is pretty low, right? Like it's not a COVID. It's not like killing.
Treated, absolutely low. Yes.
So if
untreated, it'll fucking
kill you in the end. Just a slow death.
Mm-hmm. So where does Lyme disease come from? Because like I was surprised that it wasn't found to the late 70s, 80s.
So in her book, Bitten, The Secret History of Lyme Disease and Biological Weapons, Chris Newby, she begins by saying in 1975, and where Lyme disease in the town of Old Lyme, Connecticut, which is the namesake for Lyme disease, it became the epicenter for the tick-borne illness as children began to report the skin rashes, chronic fatigue, and things like swollen knees.
Old Lyme, you say, eh? Connecticut. How far is that from Plum Island?
Shore to shore, it's 17 miles.
17 miles.
17 miles.
Pretty close.
And so this is 1975. And then about 6 years later, you would have the actual name for the condition, Lyme disease. And at that time, pretty much the foremost expert on this disease, somebody who had been looking at this disease from different angles. You had Willy Bergdorfer, which is the namesake for the Lyme, the spirochete, or the type of bacteria which causes Lyme disease, the Borrelia burgdorferi. And he was researching at the Rocky Mountain Biological Laboratory. So in 1982, he published his findings in Science, and they named the spirochete, which he had found, in honor of him.
Now, I'm going to make the connection that I'm sure you've made at home, and that plenty of conspiracy theorists and our good friend Jesse Ventura made. But this place is 17 miles away from Plum Island, where an ex-Nazi virologist who was said to be working on how to weaponize ticks and mosquitoes is now the epicenter where they find and name Lyme disease.
Just to fill in the blanks for you there.
Very strange disease.
Right? A very strange disease. And right,
and quite differently than the majority of bacterial infections.
And it's you know, and I'm not saying that what I'm saying is that
what are you saying?
Perhaps there, you know, like we've seen in other places, was a lab leak. Like ticks are fucking tiny, right? Did one get out? Did something get out, jump on the back of a bird, and, you know, make its way that way, or infect the tick population on the island, and then get out that way? Like, could you link this to that research facility? And perhaps it was something as simple as like, hey, we've recognized this disease in ticks. I wonder if this jumped to humans. Could we figure that out and then potentially figure a cure? And before that, in the name of defense of trying to figure this out, you know, getting a step ahead of it, one of these little bastards gets out, makes his way to Connecticut. I got
another question maybe for Andrew. So if I get bit and I get Lyme disease, if something bit me, would it pass it on? If a tick, you know what I mean? Or or is it just ticks have it in general? How do they get it so easily?
Well, ticks get it from, I believe they get it from vermin, because it's something they carry it, but like benignly. Does that sound right to you?
Doesn't affect them.
They have that disease, but it doesn't affect them.
Right.
But the ticks will attach to the vermin and get it from them, and then they can transmit it to us or to deers or to whatever, right?
Gotcha. So it gets out into other mammals. The tick bites the tick gets it from those mammals after it feeds, sticks to a human, bites you, you get it.
I'm gonna confirm that it's vermin, because I believe I remember
something like that. Okay, well, we'll come back to that. But okay, so it could something. I was asking because, like, what if you got bit? Human got bit in the lab. They're embarrassed. They snuck back out. They had the disease. They get bit by something else, or it transfers that way. I'm just trying to think how, if you did develop it in a lab and it passes from being bit and not like through the air, like how would it happen?
Well, because if it escaped, and let's say, like Braden said, it attached to a bird, anything like that, it can spread from there, right? It's not like it's going to kill, like it dies with the fucking host that it infects.
Right.
Like, you know, I'm just saying, if we're getting into, like, you know, conspiracy, I'm like, maybe this was a catalyst of just to see this certain spread of Lyme disease that is, you know, so adverse to humans, you know, kind of spreads wild from this point of Plum Island, where it's like, you know, it gets some birds then pass it to each other. Other ticks bite these birds, and whatever enzyme or something that is created in these ticks just kind of unlocks the Lyme disease to be transmissible to humans.
Right.
I'm no scientist, So
Nor am I.
None of us are.
None of us are.
None of
But
us
pretty
are,
much
so-
that is that like coincidence of it being so close proximity to where they find this Lyme disease.
I mean,
that's the main theory.
it's hard. Now is this the first history instance of Lyme disease ever recorded? Dan?
Well,
Is it?
that's not
I don't know.
necessarily true. No. But
I think Andrew has more to say about it.
well, that's not true. This isn't the old, we have a what is it, 5,300-year-old fucking ice mummy that we know that has the same bacteria, right?
The exact
Talking
same.
about Otzi.
Exact same?
Yeah,
Or-
Utsi.
that's the thing. Exact same bacteria or some type of manipulated
it's interesting you say though,
bacteria?
because you can look at cancer, for instance. Like you can have cancer cells in your body and not have cancer, right? Like, could it be carrying this? I'm not sure, but again, that doesn't really destroy anything for me, right? Like, look at it for this reason. Like, first of all, we're talking about a weaponized fucking virus as opposed to a naturally occurring one. And now, like, we're currently dealing with, they like to call it an endemic. Like, Lyme disease is an endemic. It's an ongoing fucking problem, but it's almost turning into an epidemic, right? Like, you look at North America alone, it's since doubled. The rates have doubled since 1997. And now it's spreading way past before it was located in isolated areas. It's not anymore. Right? You can get we didn't have this issue in Canada. We deal with fucking Lyme disease now. Lyme disease is everywhere. It's a systemic problem now within North America.
And that's why there's every year those huge tick announcement all over the radio,
and
TV.
we never had these issues previously, right?
Nope.
Until
Growing up, did I ever hear
Well,
worry about a tick bite?
But
Not till I was a teenager.
It's been increasing since 1975, right? But
Yeah.
that's when we knew, that's when we knew exactly what we're dealing with. That who's to say that thousands of people going into a doctor's office because they're lethargic and not feeling well, didn't go undiagnosed.
Well,
Lyme
and
disease,
that's the
right?
thing.
We don't know.
Forever, it was really hard to diagnose, and it still is today.
still
so
is.
It's one of those things where it's like, how many people have suffered and lived with it, not even knowing, because it was not getting diagnosed properly.
Well, yeah, if the antibodies are always changing, you do like an antibody test or antigen test or whatever, it's probably like pretty high % of false positives or negatives, or maybe or what.
So going back to the Otzi, the Eitzman thing. Now, what you guys are talking about. So I will give you that they didn't find the exact virus, but they found when they sequenced Otzi's genome. We have a complete sequence of his genome, which is super fucking cool right off the bat. What they found in there was in the bacterial DNA, they had at least like about 60%. Are pretty much like a complete enough genome to recognize that these were the spirochetes that are known to cause Lyme disease. And you might be like, okay, well, that doesn't really mean anything. But we also think, because the cool thing about Otzi is being so well preserved, is that you can actually see tattoos on his skins. I mean, you guys have heard about this, right?
Yeah.
The skin was so well preserved, like you could see actually tattoos. What they actually linked together, or what some anthropologists, when studying Otzi, is that they identified that the tattoos that he has are mainly located on joints, on his joint areas.
Where he would have had the fucking issues from fucking Lyme disease.
So they're saying that these tattoos could probably actually be medicinal in purpose.
Yeah,
that's what they were meant to do. And he from his bones, like they did identify, like he'd had problems with bone loss. They were able to identify that he suffered from arthritis. I mean, it could also be that he was like a 45-year-old, basically this was 3000 BC.
Oh, that's like 100.
He's well past prime,
Yeah, big time.
But he's also suffering from some of these diseases, and these tattoos are not. They couldn't find any evidence of these kind of tattoos identifying him with any other tribes or anything in that area. So it wasn't something that they were used for identification. They were probably they were tattoos that would have been covered.
Or maybe he just really liked tattoos on his joints.
I mean, it looks cool. It
art.
hurts like
Aesthetic.
fuck, though.
Yeah.
Those are the worst places to get.
Yeah.
I don't know. Zell,
Take it
connect
from
the
me.
dots, man. I mean,
So now we've talked about potential viruses, coming from there, and Lyme disease. What else is Plum Island famous for, or rumored to be going on there.
Oh,
So if anyone remembers
testing
if anybody
facility.
remembers a report from July 2008, you'll remember the Montauk monster that washed ashore on a beach near the business district of Montauk, New York. This article first appeared in the newspaper, the F-22 Raptor, apparently, and they kind of put out.
That's the name of the newspaper?
That's the name of the newspaper.
It's a fucking awesome
Badass
name.
name.
For newspaper. I feel like it's all
Use the
caps.
newspaper.
They probably use all caps, zero punctuation.
Yeah.
Just scream everything at you.
Fucking Montauk monster was found in New Jersey this morning.
So the interesting thing about this creature is like you can look up pictures of it. I don't know if we have pictures. Do we have pictures of it? I mean, you can Google it, Montauk monster.
It
looks
the
like
Rakin one or the long fingers one?
It was featured on Ancient Aliens. Like it made it all the way onto there. I remember it being.
It looked
on an
like
episode.
it looked like a weird. I hated every single time someone was like, maybe it's a raccoon. I was like, that doesn't look anything like any fucking raccoon. It's got a beak, for God's sakes.
Yeah, but it's decomposing probably, right? Like it's
but
probably
but-
mid you can see like the lividity and shit like that in it. Like it's definitely decomposing.
Yeah, but I can also see the beak.
Yeah, it's probably its mouth.
But I mean, if you take like you take a horse's skull,
it looks like a beak when it's
like,
fucking.
it looks like a beak when it's decomposed. I'd say that.
skulls do take a way different form without the flesh and cartilage on them. But this one,
like, have you ever seen a hippopotamus skull before?
well, yeah, but the thing about this, well, yeah, that is actually a terrifying. Like, it's fucking weird as hell.
Right?
Have you seen a hippopotamus skull? Were you there? Were you on the beaches?
Yeah, in my times when I was storming the beaches with the Marines, I've seen plenty of hippopotamus skulls. I wrestled a hippopotamus with my bare hands. And you call yourself a patriot?
That thing is like, it's a weird thing. It caused a lot of commotion.
Series, I was in a cage match with a hippopotamus. Snapped his neck like a barrel of twigs.
Oh fuck, it's too good.
But like, to look at this thing, like, I would be startled if I was walking the beach and I saw this thing.
I mean, I completely agree with you, but I think there is a feel like it's decomposing. It obviously washed ashore, so there's definitely gonna be a lot of bloat as well. Like it's gonna be as disfigured as fucking possible.
Yeah.
It's gonna be really hard to be able to tell what this thing is. That being said, it looks weird as fuck. I don't argue with you there.
I agree,
There's
I see like it looks super bloated. It's missing the hair, but the flesh seems all there. But if it was a beak, either it got like this face got eaten, which is a possibility. Like something picked his front of the face clean. But it does look like a beak has been fused with like some type of badger.
Now,
that's like it's got badger body.
This thing was attributed to Plum Island, and that people were right away theorizing that, like with ocean currents and stuff, that there's a possibility that this thing was either killed there, escaped from there, and died, ended up in the water, and drifted ashore. So it was potentially floating in the ocean till it got to Montauk.
This is one of the creatures they were working on. Like it got infected with Lyme disease, but also with hoof and mouth disease, which they coagulated into one, creating one super mutant. Looks like a badger to me. That's what it looks like. Poor bastard. And then he fucking
two different diseases going on. But
he burrowed his way off the island into the water, and now we washed up on shore.
I don't know if I don't think Lyme disease would affect it though, personally. Like I know, like your dog,
hoof and mouth would make it severely weak.
Yeah,
like burning out might be out of the.
I'm saying that them mutating together, the bacteria with that virus, or is foot and mouth a virus or bacteria? Whatever. When you put them together, it creates.
Foot and mouth is a virus.
It's a virus.
Bacteria
is what causes
Lyme disease.
Okay.
See, I went with they're doing some Dr. Zhivago shit, and they're just stitching animals
Dr.
together.
Dr. Zhivago is not like a
Dr. Zhivago.
Is that not the
Dr.
right
Moreau.
one? Dr. Moreau.
The island of Dr. Moreau. Yeah.
Which one's Zhivago?
Dogs can get Lyme
Russian,
disease.
That's like a Russian revolutionary movie.
All right, so maybe him, definitely Dr. Monroe. They were stitching animals together, or doing experiments and with breeding or something. That's what I was reading of, like
raccoons can get Lyme disease.
Interesting. It's That does make an interesting turn. I never even thought to see what kind of animals could get Lyme disease and some of these other diseases.
You just said it wasn't a raccoon.
Well, I don't think it's raccoon. It looks like it has a beak.
I said raccoons can get Lyme disease.
They fused it with the head of a bald eagle for freedom.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. That's standard procedure.
As you do.
But like, you know, is it that hard to imagine that this island is doing tests on animals? I don't know, you know, from birth.
I thought that was their whole thing. I thought their whole thing was to do testings on animals.
Right,
That's
exactly.
what they
But
exist.
like from birth, giving them some sort of defects or deformities that would create something like this, what we're seeing here.
I don't know. It is a weird looking
Is that
creature.
too far of a stretch that they're testing these diseases on like animal embryos and stuff, and then growing them up and seeing if they can make these things immune? But
we have evidence of animals with foot and mouth or hoof and mouth disease and Lyme disease, and none of them look like that. None of them have beaks. It's not causing them to have fucking random superpowers, and I don't know. I don't know what the fuck it is. But that's the thing is, I don't think they're just doing hoof and mouth testing and shit like that. I think they're fucking doing evil shit. Why else you bring a Nazi super scientist over here, go to all that effort? His name was on that list for a reason. They wanted him. They headhunted him. They brought him here for a fucking reason.
Hard to disagree. So Montauk Monster, undecided of what it.
Yeah, nobody actually knows what it is.
Whoa. What about salad fingers? What about salad fingers or whatever?
I forgot.
Talk about salad fingers?
Yeah, what's his name?
Yeah, they're well. That's a strange one because a body actually washed up on shore of Plum Island. Human body. And the one thing of note that this was a tall human male with extremely long fingers. That's in the report.
Yeah, but not only that though. The weird thing I thought too is he had the fucking bolt holes in his head.
5 bolt holes through his head.
Okay, where did we find the bolt holes? Because I could not find
Jesse.
news.
I heard it from Jesse Ventura, so that's all that
Are you
matters,
calling
pal.
me a liar?
Were you there?
Are you taking Chris Kyle's side over here, pal? Because I
Did you
don't want to
put
hear
your
anything to do
finger
with
in
it.
those boat holes? Did you put your finger there? Were you there?
Listen, I was a Navy SEAL and the ex-governor of Minnesota.
I was in
You
Predator,
stick your fingers in those
goddammit.
holes and move it around like a bowling ball, because that's what I would have done.
When I get down to every mystery when I'm on the continental United States of America after spending my winters in Mexico, and I have resources through my time in the SEALs that have
I
given
also
me,
have 87 dogs.
Yeah, this is from Jesse Ventura. I mean, the report, all the reports are there. I couldn't find them outside of Jesse Ventura stating
They went to the police station.
I would
We saw it.
also kind of. I think it would be worth mentioning that this place is like near New York and New Jersey, which is rife with. There are a number of bodies that wash up on
long-fingered
shore.
humans.
Yeah,
There's a lot of La Famiglia.
This case is
going on.
this case is allegedly still open
Forget
on this
about it,
mystery
eh?
man with long fingers.
Well, yeah, that's why I was asking, because the only news article I could find was from
the fucking Lieutenant Falcon.
Yeah, the body hasn't
Weekly.
been identified.
New
It's
York
still
Post.
technically open.
It was from just New York Post, and that's all it says is it was a male with long fingers, and there was like no other information.
Do we have an estimate on how long these fingers were?
Nope, just said long fingers.
With
How tall was he? Do we know how tall he was?
6 foot male with a
Only 6
large
feet.
build and very long fingers is the news.
Listen, for that to be your most distinguishing features, they
gotta be
6
long.
feet.
Hey,
There's
that
got to
was-
be some long ass fingers, man.
It's probably Johnny Longfingers. He got his fingers into some stuff, you know. He kind of took more than he could.
Johnny
Johnny
Long.
Longfingers.
Johnny
Hey,
Longfingers, man.
It's a fugazi, huh? Johnny Longfingers. Sleep with the fishes, huh?
Put your fingers where you're not supposed
Forget
to put
about
them.
it,
Hey.
You're gonna fit this guy with cement shoes, huh? Forget about it. So
People have
fugazi.
referred to him as the mutant man from Plum Island, right? And maybe they're doing some sort of human experiment. But I totally forgot about that one too. The long
It's like, but
fingered
why
man.
why would you let it wash up on shore on your own island, discovered by
Right.
your own security?
Yeah.
Hey, the fucking ex-governor of Minnesota showed up on your shore.
God damn it!
Nobody stopped
In a
him.
pirate
Coast
boat.
Guard, Coast
In a
Guard didn't
pirate
stop
boat.
him. Nobody's gonna stop. Nobody stops a fucking Navy SEAL.
Yeah. What else was going on in Plum Island?
I mean, that's really it. Like that's the big allegation of Lyme disease. This is one of them.
Is it shaped like a plum? Why is it Plum Island?
Why is it Plum Island?
Yeah, was it shaped like a plum?
It's a good question.
Why? Where does Plum Island come from?
I've heard it described as shaped as like a pork chop. That's what I.
Okay, so why is it Plum Island? I'm curious.
You named it for a person? Not sure.
Maybe the first owner, Sir Barnabas Plum. Could that be it?
Now, should we get into some theories and final thoughts?
Let's do it.
What I lean towards is this facility was used to research, under the guise of animal diseases, right? And they were researching animal diseases. But then it turned into, if we have all these people and, Nazis in Russia, they're working on these biological weapons. I believe this lab turned into, hey, we should try to see if we can get these animal diseases to jump to humans to then figure out how best to fight them if that happened. And, and if we do it, perhaps that's, we could use it on someone else if need be. Oh, we wouldn't do that, obviously. We would never do that. But it's just for our defense. We should get ahead of their offense. So under the guise of hey, we're just trying to figure out how to better the animal population, they studied these things and they looked at how they could make these things, if there was possibilities for these diseases under certain conditions or whatever, or certain mutations to jump to humans to better fight it. And I believe that as they started to gain traction, maybe with Lyme disease and bringing over Eric
Traub. Hans Trauber.
As they started to bring in these people and they started to get better at it, it started to gain more interest. There's Carl Grossman. He's a professional.
Der Grossman.
The Grossman. He's a full-time professor of journalism at the State University of New York. And he spent, he says, 5 decades investigating this laboratory. And he says from whistleblowers and stuff he's talked to that they've been trying to work on vaccine resistant anthrax, tons of other diseases and weaponized cholera and tons of other stuff that he says there's just no FOIA requests because it's all black book operations. And he was big against this facility moving to Kansas. But I think as soon as it got taken over by Homeland Security, I think from that point on, it's just been, we'll do anything in the name of protecting the United States. And that, I think research at that point has probably kicked into full gear from that point on of make these things be able to jump to humans and then figure out how we could fight it.
Well, so you say that just Homeland Security took over in 2003. Lyme disease was discovered in
1980. Well, 1975 is when it popped up.
I'm saying they're still doing
1975 is when it was first clinically described.
Sure.
And then 1981 or 82 is when they.
Let's call 75 the first outbreak.
Gotcha.
Well, I mean, it wasn't, but.
Wait, what? It was the first the first on record mass casual, mass
on record.
Yeah, exactly.
Identified. Well, prior to that, Lyme disease had a bunch of other names, do we know that for sure? Disease had a lot of similar things.
Probably.
I mean, yeah.
Were you there?
So I would say most of the stuff. Okay, the Lyme disease thing. I would have to say I have to recommend that you guys read the paper published in Nature, Ecology, and Evolution called the Genomic Insights into the Ancient Spread of Lyme Disease Across North America by Catherine S. Walter et al. The rest of her team, where they actually gathered together a number of ticks from 30-year period, a 30-year thing. At least 30 years, going across preserved ticks, prior to the outbreaks that you have recorded in 1975. And they actually found out a really cool thing. So like Andrew said, and Andrew mentioned, he talked about how Lyme disease is extremely adept at changing, right? You said how it likes to change and it's very that's how it's difficult to change. What she found is they found that earlier estimates of when the outbreaks or when Lyme disease actually popped out might have been inaccurate because earlier scientists hadn't taken that into their calculations and how it went in and things. So basically what they did was they took these ticks and they pretty much they took the DNA from these ticks, they spun it down, they were able to isolate the bacterial DNA, so the spirochetes. They were able to isolate just their DNA and pretty much like take it apart, and then piece by piece, being able to analyze it individually, they could figure out they could trace phylogenetically how the virus had changed or how the bacteria had changed per generation. So generation by generation, they traced it back, and then taking the amount of change or the rate of change, like Andrew says, because they kind of nailed that down with it because they were lucky enough to have so many samples. Well, they were lucky, and they were lucky enough to have so many samples. They could calculate how long it would take for those changes to take hold, how long it would take for those changes to develop. And they said that reached all the way back to their best guess was 60,000 years ago.
Best guess.
It's crazy that it took so long to put the tick bite together with those symptoms, though.
It is.
They took two moms in 1975 to be like, well, you know what? My kid's got a bite too.
It's
right. Like that's what blows my mind.
And I'm saying it. I don't disagree that Lyme disease or that kind of bacteria or whatever has been around forever. But, is there a possibility that perhaps it could have been maybe tampered with or altered and just made a little bit more effectively? Doesn't even have to be by that much, right?
Or is it a possibility that most of the outbreaks that happened we had outbreaks popping up in the 1970s were due to the demographic changes in that were taking place in North America, where you had large scale reforestations, you had explosions of deer population, like you had the deer
population and global warming are two things that can lead you to increases in ticks. I understand that. But when you throw into stuff like, first, we add in Dr. Traub and Project Paperclip, right? Or Operation Paperclip. We have evidence. Like, we've brought these scientists overs. We have evidence. We got MK Ultra, Artichoke, we got COINTELPRO. Like, we have plenty of evidence of these scientists in action. We have the fucking V2 rocket. These people were all specifically brought over for fucking key reasons. Okay. And then you go in through the history of the United States and we have Operation Big Buzz, Operation Dropkick. We've got Operation Big Itch, all weaponized uses of insects.
When did those take place?
After the fact.
No,
after they fucking came.
What year did those ones take place?
After 1975.
Operation Dropkick?
Not all of them. But listen for a second. Now they've also been working on fucking using caterpillars to take out fucking cocoa leaves in fucking Peru, or using them, or I can't remember what bug they've been using, but to go after fucking opium, right? Like, they've been purposefully trying to weaponize fucking insects for how long now? How is it so hard to fathom that this was a fucking facility used to attempt to fucking weaponize these, right? Why else would you go to the trouble to bring this motherfucker to your country to do so? When was the first big hand, foot, mouth, hoof, whatever the fuck outbreak? When was it?
When was the first one?
Yeah, when was the first on record? When was the first big one? Right? So you said he was brought over because there was issues with hand, foot, and mouth. And when he was brought over in the 50s.
They had one outbreaks. They had a pretty bad one in Mexico, like
in the 90s.
That's what after
I spent the whole break looking it up. I took the whole break going up. There was nothing on record before the fucking late 80s, early 90s. Okay, so you're telling it's a
okay. So talk. Okay, Mexico and Canada had outbreaks in 1954.
Mass ones.
Enough to be worried about.
Enough to fucking bring a kidnapped fucking Nazi scientist all the way over to fucking North America to get him to fucking work on.
That was the impetus for them to build Plum Island Agricultural Department, like the agricultural department, to establish the research center. That's why they did it. It's a matter of public record. You can look it up. Like, they said, like, this is the reason we need this facility, because we need
and you
to study
believe
this
everything your government tells you because the government lied to me my whole life.
But I will also believe that on multiple occasions, and there's multiple records of them talking about, yes, the military did experiment with the disease vectors of using insects and stuff. But in most cases, I suppose, because I don't know all of them, 100% of them off the top of my head, because nobody does, they said that this was a very ineffective way in order to think. Like you already said, Lyme disease is easily treatable. It's easily treatable. It's like, why would you use it as a
because it's extremely hard to detect. It's fucking, especially in the 70s, they didn't even know what the fuck it was. It was next to impossible to fucking detect.
Right. So why would they be experimenting with something prior to that when they didn't even know what it was?
Because the people working on it knew what it was.
No, Eric Traub didn't even know what it was until the 70s. Willy Bergdorfy is the only one who named it and isolated the bacteria. That bacteria wasn't even known to be a thing until 1981.
All right. I guess we'll have to agree to disagree here.
So what do you think?
I'm just saying, like, why?
Let Dan tell me.
So you think he would have to like they're working on secret projects and they're just going to disclose exactly what they're fucking working on? You don't.
I'm saying that science doesn't I'm saying that science doesn't happen in a bubble. You don't have military scientists who work completely isolated because that's the entire.
So then why would you go Werner Braun 1 if that wasn't happening in a fucking bubble in Germany? Why would we even bother fucking kidnapping him and bringing him over to North America?
In a bubble. The war only lasted for so long. Like they were not working in a bubble. Like they were working with other scientists, teams of scientists.
Of German scientists. We needed that technology. That's why we fucking took them. Why wouldn't we just wait and design it on our own?
I mean, because scientists doesn't happen in a bubble. You need other scientists who are working on the same concepts to trade ideas and things like that. So why wouldn't you bring over people who are experts in their fields to talk about them?
Let's say that, Dan. So let's say we just brought over this guy and he's like, yeah, I'm really good at hand, foot, and mouth disease. And they're like, oh yeah, that's great. We heard you're into weaponizing ticks. What do you think? And he's like, well, I got some ideas. I don't really know, but like we could do this and this. And maybe him even pitching this concept gets us to 1970s current Lyme disease, perhaps.
Right, but what I'm saying is that we didn't know what Lyme disease was till the 1970s. Why? How would you ask Traub, who hadn't even been involved in any of that? Like, how do you get him to work on something, or how do you develop that kind of technology to do that before you even know what you're working with?
No, we weren't there.
Well, so what was his plans for weaponizing ticks in fucking Germany then?
They were working, like, I don't know specifically ticks, but were
they planning on just fucking slowly bleeding Russians with ticks?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand.
Death from 1,000 bites.
Well, like what? Like, obviously there's a reason why he was working on this.
Right, because we've known about insect-borne illnesses for a long time. We've known about malaria. We've known about yellow fever. We've known those for decades. Like, of course you'd talk about it. Like, he would probably know about those things. And if you're familiar with like the works of cattle and hand, foot, and mouth disease, you'd be worried about those things. But I'm not 100% sure
but we know for a fact he's already been working on weaponizing fucking insects and ticks. Right?
Specifically.
I didn't see any documentation.
And then 17 miles away from the facility where he's working is the first outbreak of, it's a happy coincidence.
I guess.
They did have outbreaks in Wisconsin as well, like 20 years before that.
Did they name it Wisconsin disease?
Where are you, Dan just pulling out new facts as we go here. It's like, actually, in Wisconsin, 20 years before that.
Because he can simultaneously fucking argue and look things up at the same time.
That's exactly what he's doing.
Zoe, what are your thoughts?
I don't know if I want to give them.
I want to hear them.
That's all fucking fun. Like, who cares?
I'm just kidding. No, it's the coincidence of having Lyme disease discovered close to a level 3 like biolab where they study. Publicly they only say so much, but yeah, do they let out all information? Or are they only doing this and this? Or you have a Nazi scientist? And I get why. I get paperclip. I get that, like, okay, well, Russia's taking scientists. We're taking scientists. We got to figure out what they're trying to figure out before they figure it out in case they use what they figure out on us. So I get, like, yeah, we both sides took scientists from a whole host of fields, But yeah, he goes to this thing. It's the little sliver, the little nugget that pulls you in, right? Like, okay, you got this newly discovered disease. Debate on how many thousands of years ago, or whatever. Like, this is the first time in modern society that we've just found Lyme disease, and we gave it a name, and it's been progressing over the years. So, do I think it's out of the realm of possibility that something happened at the lab that they never told people? Maybe. Do I think it was that Did they manipulate Lyme disease? I don't know. It's strange that he was working on parasitic insects before coming.
Operation Sea Spray, the government sprayed fucking bacteria all over San Francisco and killed people with UTIs. Like, for them to fucking, be tampering with some ticks doesn't seem improper. I'm like everything you're saying.
Yeah, so I'm saying I don't know. There's obviously, this is in a subject like this, you can go every direction. I don't know, but I'm not giving it a hard no chance. I'm saying, like, we know shady shit is done. Even with the best intentions, sometimes bad shit can happen. So that's what I'm just going to say it right in limbo. Plum Island, questionable. Level 3 lab. Who knows?
I like that. I'll put myself firmly in limbo. The one thing I can't get over is bringing that guy over here for just agricultural needs here. And I get the increase in deer population and, global warming. Those are two factors that could help. But the fact that this is like the numbers are doubling and tripling fucking yearly.
We're like hundreds of thousands of cases.
It's bizarre that we just, that, I don't know. It's bizarre to me that the fact that that shit just all went undiagnosed for that long. If it had been around since how old Ötzi was again.
Well, you mentioned how difficult it is to diagnose, and it shares a lot of symptoms with other diseases.
Still, yeah, I know. But like I said, with fucking, first of all, it was 60-70% or 70 to 80% present with the fucking EM, the bullseye expanding skin rash, right? We know that. And then we know that 95% of the cases were all within certain fucking certain cities. When this in 1975 when it first started coming out, right? Like, it's, I don't know, for that many things to get lined up, and the fact that like you actually get fucking bitten by a tick, right? Yeah, you could have hair and it burrows in, you feel it, right? You don't just randomly like, hey, there's a tick. I can't believe that. I had no idea. No, you have rashes. You get fucking bitten by shit. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to fathom for me, but I will put myself in limbo as well.
But having said that, we do know now, we just talked about it in the last Power Hour, still waiting for the final thing. Over the course of history, there has been gain of function research done on other stuff to see how it's going to affect humans in the future, and maybe to plan for possible pandemics or the like. So maybe it was as simple as that. They were found this virus by accident. They're planning for it. It got out. I don't know. I'm just saying. It's stuff gets out of labs.
This one was fucking fun.
Fun one.
This is fun.
A lot of angles, a lot of different ways to go.
Hey,
but
this is a lot of fun.
I'm siding with the goddamn Navy SEAL on this one. All right. It's 100% done by the government. They're involved. They're weaponizing ticks and mosquitoes, and they're inbreeding monsters on that island.
Why would they shadow my pirate boat if I don't have something to hide?
We're gonna talk. We'll talk about more of that conspiracy theory.
We've talked about it so many times. What we got to say? That's Jesse Ventura Conspiracy Theories, the show. I'm not sure what episode that was.
Oh, dude, the Plum Island episode. It's honestly a comedy goldmine.
Yeah, I forgot about that show, and yeah, it's good stuff.
He gets offended, like visibly upset that no one will drive him out on a boat to the secret base, and he finds someone to finally do it, and they approach the top secret base with a fucking pirate flag on top of the boat. And when the Coast Guard's coming, he's like, I was the goddamn ex-governor of Minnesota. Who the fuck do they think I am? Some sort of terrorist? I'm like,
why won't they? Yeah.
I'm like, they probably think you're a fucking pirate because you've got a fucking pirate flag.
Why won't they let me onto a secure facility where they develop animal diseases without an appointment?
Dude.
There's a great part in the episode early on where obviously in the cast, I think his name's Alex, who's got to be their Dan. And they're all going around talking about Plum Island. And this Alex guy's like puts his head up and he's like, hey, maybe we're just making a big deal out of nothing. They're like, shut the fuck up, Alex. This is a big fucking deal.
Alex, you son of a bitch.
And they're all like yelling. They're like,
go sit in the corner and thumb your asshole.
Is the cow country, middle of cattle country. What the hell do you think we're doing here? I was a goddamn Navy SEAL. Do you remember when David Blaine was attempting to hold his breath for 17 minutes in 2006? Well, he failed that attempt and he came to see me because I can hold my breath. I've been holding my breath since 1973.
I've been holding my breath this entire podcast.
It's dude, it's so funny when he goes to Washington. He goes to Washington unannounced, and he's like, "None of these cowards will talk to me."
Okay, all right, we're gonna talk about more about the episode in After Hours. We're gonna go forever here.
Yeah.
Let's give a quick shout out to a Theorite of the week. Who do we got this week?
All right, this week's Theorite of the week it's loading, and it's Joseph Knott. Does that sound right? Knaut.
Oh yeah, we got to go for this. A great meme with a goddamn Jim Dan.
Yeah.
We've got a Rougarou over here, Jim.
It's such a perfect. I just love Dan's face in that. Like honestly, it cracked me up. It's so.
I mean,
good.
that's Dan. That's Dan without a shirt and a hat.
Yes.
Everything else is perfect. Like that's just him.
Short,
Like
jacked,
Dio.
hairy shoulders.
Yep.
That makes sense.
That's him.
Yeah.
That's
That's
me.
him. Mm-hmm.
So Theorite of the week.
Excellent. Thank you.
Fairly accurate representation.
We're doing a much better job now of collecting all the Theorite of the week material, all other stuff from socials, and doing a weekly beatdown of it. What do we do? Like usually like 5 to 10 different ones every week. In Instagram, share them.
Oh
everywhere.
yeah, I do a little best of socials post. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff.
It's usually about 75% Burmeister guys.
Hey,
flooding our fucking
a
socials.
machine.
He's good at what he does.
the guy can only win so many times, so can't give it to him every week.
I tell you, if he got that Tim, I would give him the third one if he got that Tim Scullion fucking Samsung Galaxy tablet photo, because that's hard work. That's putting in.
You're putting in. All right,
Mister, you've been tasked.
You've been tasked. You want that Theorite of the year?
Might be us though on our pod trip. We'll see.
There is talks of a pod trip coming. More information soon.
Booked it off yesterday.
Fuck yeah. At least we got the date. Not exact location to be determined. Stand by. All right. If you want to support your boys, support your favorite show, get early access to the podcast, ad-free, live stream, Discord, all the bonus stuff, patreon.com/Alien Theorist Podcast. This week's newest supporters: Thizabeth, Doc Legless, Tenko, James Serber, Craig, Callie Welch, and Kurt went up a tier to the $5 pledge.
I think that's pronounced Braden.
Kurt?
Oh, Craig. You said Craig. It's
just Craig. Oh, yeah, I see. Yeah. Sorry. Braden supports the show. He usually subscribes and deletes it instantly and pays no money.
Classic.
All right.
And as we always say at the end of these things, keep those eyes on the skies.
See you in After Hours.